Right, we start with questions. Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs, Sarah Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 1.
Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 1, 3, 8 and 21 together. Aid must be restored to Gaza. It should never be used as a political tool, and Israel is bound under international law to allow the unhindered passage of humanitarian aid. The UK has jointly called an urgent session of the UN Security Council this afternoon to address the dire situation in Gaza.
Sarah Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The current intentional blockade of food, water and medicine by the Israeli government is preventing life-sustaining supplies reaching thousands of children, who the Minister knows are the most vulnerable to malnutrition and premature death. Save the Children estimate over 65,000 children are currently suffering. May I therefore ask what decisive action the government are taking beyond the E3 statement to make it clear to the government of Israel that its siege in Gaza must end immediately and a humanitarian aid system cannot be replaced with a military-controlled one? And will he consider sanctions, cessation of arms and rule out any trade deal, as children should not pay the price for the inaction of the international community?
My honourable friend is right to raise the plight of children in Gaza and indeed all those suffering from the lack of aid and the continued conflict. This government has been clear the ceasefire must be restored, and since the E3 statement, which my honourable friend mentions, we have now taken a decision jointly with our partners to call an urgent session at the UN Security Council, given the gravity of the situation.
Joe Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The looming famine in Gaza is not a natural disaster. It's a direct result of the deterioration in the ceasefire agreement. It's deeply concerning that this is putting the entire population of Gaza at a critical risk of food insecurity and potential famine. Can the Minister assure me that this government is supporting every possible opportunity to get vital resources and humanitarian aid into the region?
I can give him that assurance, Mr. Speaker. We are doing everything we can in order to ensure that aid gets in, that hostages are released, that Hamas is no longer in charge of Gaza, and we get the ceasefire and the path to a two-state solution that we so desperately need.
Paul Waugh.
Mr. Speaker, the UN's Philippe Lazzarini is right, isn't he, when he said today that Israel is committing a massive atrocity by blocking aid to children of Gaza. But as well as urgent need for aid, the Palestinian people really need some more trade with countries like the UK. So can the Minister explain how my constituency in Rochdale can buy more Palestinian goods such as olive oil, herbs and dates, and also how they can support tech companies in the many cooperatives that operate in West Bank and Gaza?
I thank my honourable friend for the question. I know that Rochdale is the home of the cooperative movement in this country and that there are many cooperatives in the occupied Palestinian territories as well. On the 28th of April, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the Palestinian Authority. This includes pursuing further cooperation in exactly the areas he describes, including economic development and trade.
David Chadwick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gaza faces imminent famine due to the Israeli government's blockade, and over 2 million people are facing catastrophic hunger levels. What action is the UK government taking to lift the blockade and secure the delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza?
This government has a clear position on the vital importance, Mr. Speaker, of aid returning to Gaza. That is why we're calling an urgent session of the UN Security Council this afternoon. That is why the Foreign Secretary has made these points repeatedly and clearly to his Israeli counterparts, as indeed have I.
Mark Pritchard.
But how long is the UK going to walk by on the other side as Palestinian children bleed and starve to death? And isn't it time that this government, and indeed His Majesty's loyal opposition, show that they are supportive of Israel, but that support doesn't necessarily mean they're supportive of a particular government, in this case, a racist, brutal regime of Netanyahu?
Mr. Speaker, let us not forget what this government has done. We restored funding to UNRWA after the other side froze it. We suspended arms export licences when the other side didn't take action. We've provided £129 million in humanitarian assistance to the occupied Palestinian territories. We are not on the other side of the road. I welcome the honourable member's strong views on this, and I found his intervention last week very powerful indeed. There is no one on this side of the House who does not understand the gravity of the situation. That is why we invited the Palestinian Prime Minister. That is why we signed the MOU. That is why we're calling an urgent session of the Security Council. This government will not be on the other side of the road to Palestinian suffering.
Last week, the United Nations issued a report which described the situation in Gaza as being one of the most ostentatious and merciless manifestations of the desecration of human life and dignity. I understand that the government has always insisted that it is not for them but for the courts to determine what is and what is not a genocide. But he'll know that the Genocide Convention almost also puts a legal obligation on states to act to prevent a genocide occurring. In relation to Gaza, does he believe that the UK has fulfilled its legal obligation under the Genocide Convention to prevent a genocide happening in Gaza?
Mr. Speaker, as I said to the honourable gentleman just now, we are taking action, not just rhetoric, action in order to try and address the situation in Gaza. That includes calling the Security Council to urgent session this afternoon alongside our partners, and we will continue to take the action that we think we need to see in order to ensure that the people of Gaza get what they need.
Iqbal Mohamed.
Mr. Speaker, we hear about the actions the government is taking, but unfortunately none of those actions are leading to the prevention of starvation and killing of innocent civilians. The latest numbers, which are only an estimate, have shown that over 60 children have died of starvation on official record, and we don't know how many have died that are not yet recorded. One step that has not been taken by this government, I welcome the aid, but when the aid is standing on the other side of a crossing and cannot get to those people in need, it's useless. So 11 months ago, there were airdropped aid into Gaza. So why is the government not airdropping aid and providing aid via sea? And will the government condemn the bombing of the Freedom Flotilla on the 2nd of May that went to provide aid?
Mr. Speaker, as I think the House knows, I am familiar with the impediments of getting aid into Gaza. I myself went to the Gaza-Egyptian border to see the restrictions. We have made these points in public and in private, and we will continue to do so. We are talking to our Jordanian partners and others. There are many in the region with real concerns, understandably, about the lack of aid getting in. And while we are looking with Jordan and others about what alternatives there may be, Mr. Speaker, I have to be plain with the House. There is no alternative to a land route if aid is to get in at the scale which is required. So we have to be clear with the Israeli government and with all partners in the region that opening those crossings is critical.
Clive Efford.
Mr Lanzini also said that children in Gaza are more likely to die of starvation than they are an act of violence. What does my right honourable friend expect from tonight to this afternoon's session in the UN? What is it specifically he's going to be asking for that will move this situation on? Israel cannot be allowed to continue to use food as a weapon of war.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for the question. I think in my previous answer I was clear on what this government's expectations are. Those are expectations grounded in Israel's international legal obligations. But ultimately, this is a week of diplomacy. The President of the United States will be in the region. We will be raising these issues in the Security Council, and I hope that diplomacy will be able to make progress towards that ceasefire and towards the restoration of aid.
Calum Miller, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gaza has now been starved of humanitarian aid for over 70 days. Ministers have repeatedly expressed their disappointment, but there is no evidence that the Israeli government is listening or has any intention of reopening these supply routes. So may I therefore ask the Minister two things. In March, the Foreign Secretary withdrew his assessment that the blockade is a breach of international law. Will the Minister now state how many days the blockade must continue for before the government recognises it as a breach of international law? And to make clear the UK's support for Palestine's right to self-determination and our opposition to the extremist policy of annexation by force, will the government commit to work with France towards the joint recognition of the State of Palestine at the conference next month?
The Foreign Secretary has been clear repeatedly, as have all ministers from this dispatch box, that it is long-standing policy of British governments that we do not make legal determinations. We made an assessment when we arrived that there was a real risk of serious breaches of international humanitarian law. We continue to assess that. That continues to be our finding. And with the events that many in this House have continued to raise rightly, we continue to make those assessments and include all of those events in those assessments. On the French conference, the French-Saudi conference in June, we of course continue to talk with all of our partners. As I said in my previous answer, this is a period for diplomacy. This is a period where a ceasefire is desperately needed, and it is diplomacy that will get us through to the next stage.
Fred.
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK welcomes the commitments made by India and Pakistan to pause any further military action. Given our strong and close relationships with both countries, the UK stands ready to work with both sides to make a lasting ceasefire a reality.
James Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Saturday, I met constituents in Bury North with deep family roots in Pakistan, Assad, Kashmir, including relatives in Mirpur, Kotli, Bimba, Lahore and Gujarat. There's growing anxiety within this community in Bury about the potential for this conflict to escalate once again. Whilst I praise the efforts of the British government in securing a ceasefire, given the UK's historic ties to the region, will the Minister assure the House that the government will continue its diplomatic efforts and dialogue to ensure lasting peace, including the vital protection of water access under the Indus Water Treaty, which must not be weaponised in any escalation?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend. Can I say that we do recognise and understand that the situation in India and Pakistan is deeply unsettling for over 3 million UK British nationals that stem from those two countries with which we have deep relationships. Can I say that I have spoken to my Indian and Pakistani counterparts 4 times, both of them since this crisis came underway, and obviously I stay in close touch with Secretary of State Rubio, my counterparts in Saudi Arabia and UAE particularly, again, nations that have relationships with both countries. We will do all we can, and we encourage both India and Pakistan to maintain their commitment to hard-won areas of diplomatic cooperation like the Indus Water Treaty.
Bob Black.
Thank you, Speaker. Following the terrorist attack on the 22nd of April, India and Pakistan engaged in military activity, and India hit 9 terrorist bases. Now there's a fragile peace, which of course is still being negotiated today. What efforts is the Foreign Secretary making to ensure that the terrorist bases are removed from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir?
Well, let me be clear that the horrendous terrorism that we saw, 26 nationals stripped and shot, was horrific. And we condemn it, and we will continue to work with close partners to deal with these terrorist threats. He's right. All of us have to lean in now and ensure that we are supporting efforts on both sides to deal with horrendous terrorism. That is what, in the end, will maintain an enduring peace.
Mr.
Speaker, and the reality remains that the international community has failed to act on the plight of the Kashmiris for over 7 decades, from the revocation of Article 370 and 35A, stripping Jammu and Kashmir of its special status, to the mass arrests and political repression in one of the most militarised zones in the world. The attacks on Kashmiri human rights and civil liberties are intolerable. So I say to the Minister, if we are serious about human rights and long-term peace and stability in the region, then the central issue of Kashmir cannot be ignored any longer and must now get the attention it deserves. So will he today reaffirm our unwavering commitment to the birthright to self-determination for the sons and daughters of Kashmir?
Well said.
Well, look, let me once again condemn the terrorism that we saw that began this crisis and remind the House that since 1947 there have been 6 conflicts and 3 wars between these two great countries. The long-standing position of the UK is that it is for India and Pakistan to find a lasting resolution to the situation in Kashmir, taken into account, of course, as the honourable gentleman suggests, the wishes of the Kashmiri people.
Will Forster.
Speaker, my constituents in Woking, particularly those of India and Pakistani descent, welcome the ceasefire. Will the Foreign Secretary urge both countries that the solution to the Kashmir question is one of self-determination and not further violence?
Well, as I have said, it is absolutely for India and Pakistan to find a lasting resolution to this situation in Kashmir. And of course, it must in the end take into account the wishes of the Kashmiri people. But all of us have a responsibility to condemn terrorism wherever it occurs. 26 innocent people stripped and shot is intolerable. And of course, we condemn it.
We come to Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Pritchard.
Mr. Speaker, we all welcome the easing of tensions over the weekend between India and Pakistan, and our thoughts continue to be with those who have been affected by this shocking terrorist atrocity. The House will be aware of the ongoing presence of terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan, and that should be a concern for all of us. Last week, the Minister at the dispatch box, the Honourable Member for Lincoln, commented that he had held discussions with his Pakistani counterpart on this very issue. What further discussions have taken place to secure commitments from the Pakistani government that they will dismantle terrorist infrastructure? And what role will Britain play in supporting the removal of terrorist threats within Pakistan, because that's what's going to improve the stability and security in that region?
Well, I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady. Can I say to the Honourable, my reflections over the last few days, we do need proper communication between India and Pakistan. And that needs not just to be on military channels, it must be on political channels as well. And she will recognise that on this occasion, those communications are poor. We do need confidence-building measures and to ensure that we're dealing with terrorism where it acts. And of course, the United Kingdom will lean in relation to that. Above all else, we need dialogue. There is a role that the international community can play, particularly where countries have relations with both. That is why we've been talking to the United States, that's why we've been talking to Saudi, and that's why we're working with UAE.
John Cooper.
Yeah. Question number 4, please, Mr. Speaker.
Foreign Secretary.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 4 and 10 together. The UK is supportive of US efforts to reach a nuclear deal with Iran. We've encouraged Iran to engage with President Trump's efforts in good faith and to find a diplomatic solution. Since the beginning of May, I've raised Iran with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff. We discussed the range of threats that Iran poses to the UK and our partners.
John Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps is the terrorism export wing of the despotic regime in Tehran. Yes. Why are we not joining the Americans in proscribing this organisation when we did prescribe the Wagner organisation in Russia? Is it possibly because the Americans are pressuring us to continue our tenuous diplomatic links with Tehran?
Well, can I remind the honourable gentleman that on the 4th of March, the UK specified Iran under the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme, targeting those who undertake malign activity in the UK. Of course, we keep prescription under review. We are looking closely at the area of state threats. That is traditionally very different to the sorts of cells and terrorist communities that we do subscribe. That's why the government continues to look at this area very carefully.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our United Kingdom and the United States are aligned in the view that a nuclear-armed Iran would pose a serious threat to global stability. Now, with nuclear negotiations currently underway between the US and Iran, can the Secretary of State inform the House what outcome his department would consider a success from a British perspective, and crucially, does he have a contingency plan if these talks fail to produce an acceptable result?
Well, I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman. Iran is now producing roughly one significant quantity of highly enriched uranium every 6 weeks. It's 40 times above the JCPO limit, the deal that we struck with Iran. I've got that deal in front of me. I'm really crystal clear about this. Iran must never develop a nuclear weapon. It must reverse its escalations, and we've seen this in its enrichment programme. It mustn't carry any critical weaponisation work, and these terms have to be fully verifiable. Unless we get that, we'll see a snapback of the sanctions regime that we struck with them 10 years ago.
Foreign Secretary, then, please.
Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the regime in Tehran is responsible for so much of the appalling bloodshed and conflict in the Middle East. They pose a direct threat to Britain and on British soil, and we've seen that from the recent arrests of Iranian nationals in counter-terrorism operations. Can the Foreign Secretary confirm, has he summoned the Iranian ambassador to express concerns, explain what's been going on British soil, what discussions have taken place with our allies, in addition to the nuclear talks that he has just referred to? What is the position of our partners in the region to these very specific threats that Iran is posing and demonstrating with their dissidents on UK soil? And when will the government come forward with a comprehensive and clear strategy on dealing with Iran?
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady. She's right that on the 3rd of May, counter-terrorism policing arrested 8 individuals, including 7 Iranian nationals, as part of 2 separate police investigations. And of course, the Middle East Minister has spoken to the Israeli ambassador. As I said, we, on the 4th of March, put them on the FIRS scheme. We keep, of course, prescription under review. We are fully engaged with our E3 partners. Very pleased now that Germany has a government, so we can work with them together on JCPOA and snapback. And of course, we're speaking to Steve Witkoff.
Question number 5, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK is a principled humanitarian donor. We prioritise giving humanitarian assistance to people in greatest need, including protecting the most vulnerable by supporting access to education in emergencies and crises, and decisions on future budgets are subject to the ongoing spending review and resource allocation processes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to the Education and Development Forum, planned cuts to the official development assistance budget could slash UK aid for education by more than 70% by 2027 compared to 2019 levels. In Gaza, where 95% of schools are damaged and 650,000 children go without formal education, UK-backed programmes will be vital to restoring hope, providing stability and equipping children with the skills to rebuild. Does the Minister agree with me that education aid must be protected, particularly in crisis responses such as in Gaza?
As the Prime Minister set out, the UK will continue to play a leading humanitarian role, including in Gaza, where children must be allowed to return to school in safety. Through our global funding, the UK enables thousands of children to gain access to essential education services, supporting recovery from the trauma of war and building skills and hope for the future.
Jim Shallow.
Mr. Speaker, in the past, the Minister has spoken very positively about education in areas. So can I ask the Minister this question? What assessment has been made on the potential progress that could be made in terms of reducing youth radicalisation by allocating aid to education programmes, as we have witnessed over the years a number of young people being brainwashed online by extremist groups? Thank you.
I thank the honourable member for his question, and we have an excellent programme called Education Cannot Wait, which in 2024 provided £12 million in first emergency response grants, not just covering the educational needs, but also the psychosocial needs of those affected by conflict and trauma.
So the Minister Wendy Moore.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We know that education can make a real difference to a girl's life chances, and that's why the last Conservative government committed to ensuring every girl has access to quality education. We will now be spending less, though, on development, so can the Minister give clarity on the commitments that the government are giving to support women and girls over the next few years, the programmes that will be kept and those that will be cut, and how much will be invested in these programmes?
The FCDO's humanitarian framework sets out our long-term approach through 3 policy priorities: humanitarian assistance to those in greatest need, protecting people at risk in conflict and crises, and preventing and anticipating future shocks, and building resilience. Building resilience, and the people at most risk are often women and young girls who fail to have access to education, and the indices of educational attainment will be the basis on which many of these decisions are made.
Jardine.
Question number 6, please.
Minister.
With your permission, Mr Speaker, I'll answer questions 6 and 18 together. We are committed to strengthening support for British nationals abroad, including introducing a right to consular assistance in cases of human rights violations. The Department is considering a package of measures which we'll announce in due course alongside options for stakeholder consultations.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. An estimated 5,000 British citizens every year are arrested abroad, many of them under false pretences, used as hostages, denied access to legal representation, and their families are left without information or knowing what's happening to them. High-profile cases at the moment, like Ala Abd al-Fattah in Egypt and Jagtar Singh Johal in India. None of these people have an automatic right to support, as is the case with other countries like the United States. So can you give us more details of exactly what the consular assistance will be, and if it will be automatic for everyone?
The safety and security of British nationals overseas is a top priority for the government. This is a complex area of policy. The Honourable Lady describes the wide range of different consular cases that the Foreign Office responds to, from kidnap cases to more routine consular cases. Given the complexity of these issues, as I set out to the Foreign Affairs Committee, we'll be coming back to Parliament in due course with options for consultation.
Sir Ian Duncan.
Mr Speaker, I just remind the Government that their manifesto promised a legal right to consular assistance in case of human rights violations. With respect, the Government's been in power now close on a year. This isn't something that should take a big shove. Surely we should do that straight away. It's a legal right, surely. Those characters that have been remaining in this, including Ryan Cornelius and Jimmy Lai. Ryan Cornelius has been 17 years illegally held. The UN has criticised it, said it's a human rights violation. For ages, we didn't send anybody to see him. Surely now we must act and call these regimes out, and the first to start is to give them the absolute right to consular assistance.
Yeah. I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his question and his commitment to these issues. And were it only so that passing a right in this place would then secure the release of the people who are raised. Every case that has been mentioned by both members do receive consular assistance. I've met with the families of Ryan Cornelius and indeed Abd al-Fattah. They both remain very much in our minds. It is important that we get the right correct, that these are complex cases. We are bound not just by what we decide in here, but also by the relevant conventions and diplomatic norms. So we will take action to try and preserve the safety of British nationals overseas, but it's right that we take our time to ensure we get this right.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It is at times of crisis that British nationals abroad need consular services the most. I share many of my Luton North constituents' concerns about the violence in India, Pakistan and Kashmir, including a 12-year-old boy who contacted me yesterday about his aunt and uncle who are stranded in Pakistan, as is one of my lovely neighbours. Although airspace is now opened, what steps is the Minister taking to ensure all British residents have access to consular services and are able to return to the UK as soon as possible?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My honourable friend is a doughty champion for her constituents, including at all hours through the weekend. So I recognise her commitment and the commitment of many others in this House. I set out in the Foreign Secretary set out in a Dear Colleagues letter the details for ensuring that MPs are able to contact the Foreign Office in a timely way. I would encourage all those watching at home to sign up to our travel advice and keep watching it carefully.
Matt Doodle.
Speaker. One British citizen denied consular access is Jimmy Lai, who faces life in prison for exercising the rights guaranteed to him under the joint declaration between the UK and China. He will have seen reports that America intended to raise the case of Jimmy Lai during the talks they had with China in Geneva recently. I wonder what steps the government can take to capitalise on that renewed interest from the United States in this case so that we can secure Jimmy Lai's freedom.
Mr. Speaker, we continue to call on the Hong Kong authorities to end their politically motivated prosecution and immediately release Jimmy Lai. As my honourable friend would expect, I won't comment over much on the actions of other states, but I would just point out that the Prime Minister has raised this directly, as has the Foreign Secretary, the Chancellor and many others, directly with relevant authorities.
John Mill.
Question number 7, please, Mr. Speaker.
Foreign Secretary.
Last week, I travelled with European partners to Lviv at the invitation of Ukraine's Foreign Minister, and yesterday I hosted for the first time in London, foreign ministers from the Weimar Plus group of key European allies to discuss our joint efforts to strengthen European security and secure a just and lasting peace in Ukraine.
Well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last weekend, the Prime Minister said that the UK will do all it can to support Ukraine. So why, if that is the case, does the government continue to prevaricate over seizing billions of pounds in frozen Russian assets held in UK banks, which could be used to build Ukrainian defences? The longer we delay, the more likely it is that these funds will get wrapped up in other negotiations and we will lose the chance altogether.
Well, I'm grateful for the Honourable raising the issue, but it's not an issue on which the government should act unilaterally. It's absolutely a multilateral issue that we should act on with our G7 partners and our European partners, recognising that there are some partners in Europe that are hugely exposed. The best way to move forward is to pool those assets, and those discussions are ongoing.
Joanna Baxter.
Mr. Speaker, the University Humanitarian Research Lab was doing incredible work tracking the 19,546 Ukrainian children who have been stolen by Russia. They then became the victim of the Doge cuts, and following international outrage, their work was preserved and given a reprieve for 6 weeks. That 6 weeks ended on the 8th of May. So can my right honourable friend give some assurance to the House that the data collected by that university has been secured and transferred to Europol, or that their funding is secure for the longer term?
Well, can I say to my... thank you for raising this issue continually. We're an active member of the International Coalition for Return of Ukrainian Children. We fund the Bring Back Ukraine and Save Ukraine Children campaign. We've raised these issues internationally. I'm very proud to have worked with Madam Zelensky on this issue. I will write to the Honourable Lady as soon as I can to update her on the funding.
Sir James Cleverly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The sustainable success of Ukraine in its self-defence hinges very much on the appetite of the President of the United States of America. So what steps is the Foreign Secretary, his ministers and officials taking to ensure that the President of the United States of America stays committed to defending territorial integrity, not just of his own nation, but of all nations? And will he ensure the White House understands that allowing an aggressor to prosper in this case will encourage other aggressors to invade their neighbours in the future?
Well, I'm very grateful for the experience and the strength with which the honourable gentleman makes his remarks this morning. He will have seen that the Prime Minister was with President Zelensky and other European partners. He will have noted that they engaged in Kyiv with President Trump. We welcome the desires to get an enduring peace, but there must be a ceasefire in order to engage in those talks, it seems to me. And it is Putin that is prevaricating. It is Putin that is obfuscating, and we must call that out with our long experience of scrutinising that particular individual.
We all hope the mooted peace talks between Russia and Ukraine to end Russia's illegal invasion take place as quickly as possible to stop the killing and save lives. Accountability is also important, so will the Foreign Secretary of State outline his position on Russian war crimes and how justice can be done?
Well, I was very pleased to be with other European foreign ministers in Lviv to support the special tribunal and be crystal clear that those that have prosecuted this war must attest and be accountable for their actions.
Calum Miller, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ukrainians continue bravely to resist Russia's war machine, yet President Trump continues to indulge in the fantasy that Putin is serious about peace. The UK needs to maintain clear leadership in the face of Trump's unreliability. In his response to me in March, the Foreign Secretary said the UK wanted to pursue the seizure of frozen Russian assets, but that Belgium and Germany were blockers. I listened carefully to the answer he gave to my honourable friend, the member for Horsham, and he spoke about multilateralism. So can I ask him, what conversations has he had since March with his counterparts in Belgium and Germany on this issue? And when will the point come when the UK will show leadership, call time and lead from the front by seizing these Russian assets?
Well, can I say to the honourable gentleman, I have had detailed talks with my Belgian counterparts, not just at my foreign minister level, but technical talks that have involved our officials. I know that he understands multilateralism. He will recognise that the new German government have only been in power for a matter of days. I was able to discuss this issue yesterday with my German counterpart, but with all grace, I am allowing him to spend some time getting into the detail of the issue.
Number 9, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As the Foreign Secretary said in his Q lecture, we are completely committed to ratifying the Marine Biological Diversity of Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction Agreement, and primary legislation is required to give effect to our obligations under the agreement, and legislation to implement the agreement will be introduced as soon as the legislative timetable allows.
The UK has led world-class conservation efforts, and this government has rightly committed to the landmark High Seas Treaty. But we must act now, as without ratification, the UK risks losing its place in shaping this vital treaty's implementation and its future direction. So can the Minister confirm when legislation to ratify the agreement will be introduced, or provide a clear timetable? If we want to stay at the table, we must claim our seat.
Hear, hear. She is quite right to push the government on this, and we will redouble our efforts as the FCDO to get into this place to make sure that we do the necessary to conclude that process, that legal process.
Shadow Minister Andrew Rossendale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK is a world leader in protecting marine environments, particularly around the British overseas territories. But tragically, that reputation is about to be trashed when Labour surrendered to Mauritius one of the most important marine protected areas around the British Indian Ocean Territory. While Mauritian fisheries ministers have been pledging to issue fishing and trawler licences for those waters, Labour ministers have given no assurances about future protections, just vague comments on working with Mauritius on a new MPA. So, can the minister state if the proposed treaty will have any guaranteed protections in place? And can she confirm what was said in a legal letter to British Lagosians, that their right of return is not guaranteed? Surely that would be a total betrayal.
I thank the Shadow Spokesperson for his question, and as I'm sure he is aware following the trip that he and I did together when we were both on the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, that the marine protected area will continue and that the environment has been at the heart of the negotiations. And indeed, he must remember that, because when he was the chair of the all-party group on the Chagos, he began the debate with the Mauritians. So I'm sure he's in a very good position to get to ask any further questions he may like to ask of the Mauritians.
No, you never told me.
Number 11.
Mr. Speaker, this government is
resolutely committed to development, but we recognise that we must do it differently, and we will ensure that the aid budget delivers value for money and has impact globally. Supporting and growing economies will be at the heart of how we spend ODA going forward, and further decisions on the ODA budget, including specific programmes, are of course subject to the spending review and resource allocation processes.
David Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These severely constrained budgets call for thinking smarter, not simply smaller. So what work are they doing with the World Bank and other international institutions to make sure that UK development spend is fully leveraged so that every penny is absolutely as effective as possible?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he raises a very, very important point, and of course we continue to engage very, very closely with our partners in the World Bank and indeed other multilateral development institutions. Multilateral cooperation allows a global scale of investment and delivery that outstrips what countries can achieve alone, and we're also looking at other ways, including of course through the important work of British International Investment and other bodies. So we're going to look at across the board multilaterally to increase our impact.
Alice Bagdell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. 2014 legislation says the government must give due regard to spending aid in a way which contributes to gender equality. Following up on the question earlier, will the Minister confirm that supporting women and girls is a ministerial priority and that we will continue funding vital programmes that support women and girls in many areas?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it certainly is, and women and girls will remain at the heart of our programming, and I can reassure her that equality impact assessments are an essential part of how we make decisions on ODA allocations, and indeed Minister Chapman's going to be appearing before the IDC later on today, and I think we'll be setting out our approach to the equality impact assessment and other processes.
Sir Andrew Mitchell.
Speaker, will the Minister ensure that Britain properly replenishes the Global Alliance for Vaccines, a brilliant programme that has benefited so much from British leadership as well as taxpayers' money? And when making his decision on how big that replenishment should be, will he remember that the polling shows that 83% of our constituents think that this is a brilliant use of taxpayers' money and we should support it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the right honourable gentleman and I have long engaged on these issues for a long time, and he knows how I recognise the importance of the work that Gavi do, and indeed other bodies like the Global Fund. We're proud to have supported Gavi to vaccinate over 1 billion children, saving 18 million lives, and indeed generating 250 billion in economic benefits. We're considering our next investments as part of the spending review process, and we look forward to the June event.
Joe Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reduction to 0.3% will require painful decisions, but there are innovative financing mechanisms where Britain could lead, for example, increasing special drawing rights, using the exchange equalisation account, guarantees and debt relief. So can the Minister commit to work with the Treasury to look at all these non-ODA instruments where Britain could show leadership and fund our development programmes?
So he can make that commitment, and I won't go into any individual item of the list that he suggested, but indeed in relation to the answer I gave earlier, we're looking at all measures which we can support development and economic growth globally, and working with multilateral partners.
Jenny Riddle-Carpenter.
Number 12, please, Mr. Speaker.
Foreign Secretary.
I was honoured to attend the VE military procession, reception and service of remembrance alongside the Prime Minister and His Majesty the King last week. The events were a fitting tribute to the hundreds of thousands of men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice during the Second World War.
Jenny Riddle-Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Victory in Europe celebrations in Suffolk Coastal last week were a poignant reminder of the need to continue to press for peace today, both in Ukraine and in securing an end to the war in Palestine. Does the Foreign Secretary agree with me that the lessons of World War II must not be forgotten? Its innocence and as innocent civilians continue to face violence and warfare here in Europe and in the Middle East.
Well, I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady. And it's important that I put on record also that this was a war, the Second World War, in which the Commonwealth played a tremendous part. Our European partners played an important part, and Europe benefited greatly from the sacrifices made to fight fascism. And we must continue, wherever we see tyranny, to stand up for the rights of innocent people. I was proud to then spend the next day in Lviv, standing with those who are fighting today.
Dr. Andrew Merson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The centenary of the Second World War is way into the future, but will he ensure that the UK does not repeat the mistakes of the past, when we were rather late coming to the party in relation to the international commemoration of the centenary of the Great War, will he say when we will engage with international partners to start preparing for the centenary of the Second World War? Will his department take the lead? Will the Cabinet Office take the lead? Or will it be DCMS?
Well, he asked an important question. I'm not sure that entering my 25th year in Parliament that I will be in Parliament on that occasion, but he is right that we commemorate it appropriately. So I will ask the necessary questions in the coming days and update him.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 13.
Minister.
We cannot address the urgency of the climate and nature crisis without coordinated global action. We're supporting nature restoration and resilience in many important ways, including protecting and restoring forests and working with Indigenous people in the Amazon and Congo basins and supporting vulnerable coastal communities and ecosystems.
Get you right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week marked the 99th birthday of Sir David Attenborough and the release of his powerful new film, Ocean. I would encourage all members to watch it. It makes a compelling case for ocean protection as essential to tackling climate change and restoring nature. With the 2025 UN Oceans Conference in France fast approaching, will my honourable friend ensure the UK arrives in the strongest position for that conference by ratifying the High Seas Treaty and delivering our domestic nature restoration goals through measures including by ending bottom trawling in marine protected areas?
Mr. Speaker, firstly, let me wish a belated happy birthday to Sir David. His advocacy for the natural world is truly inspirational. We're committed to ratifying the agreement and we will introduce legislation to implement this as soon as the legislative timetable allows.
Right. Sean Barry.
14, Mr. Speaker.
The Government is committed, Mr. Speaker, to securing Allah's release, and we continue to raise this case at the highest levels of the Egyptian Government. The Foreign Secretary has raised this case on multiple occasions, as have I. The National Security Advisor has also raised this case, as has the Prime Minister.
Sean Barry.
I thank the Minister for his response. Members of family of Alaa Abdel Fattah are again in the gallery today, and his mother, Layla, has now not taken food for 7 months. I met her again recently. She's so frail now. Can the Minister agree that Alaa's arbitrary detention, long after his sentence ended, continues in violation of the Vienna Convention, and this must have consequences now for Egypt, including international legal options and new travel advice, given the evident dangers to British nationals detained in Egypt?
I would also like to pay tribute to the fortitude and the bravery of Allah's family, both those in the gallery and, of course, Layla, who I've met on a number of occasions, and indeed the Prime Minister has met too. We consider Allah a British national. He holds both British and Egyptian nationality, and we have been clear on that point, even though it is disputed by the Egyptian Government. We are committed to continuing to work on this case.
Sir Richard.
Question number 15, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
The UN Ocean Conference is an important moment for protecting the ocean and progress towards the UN Sustainable Development Goal 14, life below water. The UK is attending and actively involved in negotiating the political declaration for the conference.
Sir Champion.
David Attenborough's latest film, Ocean, revealed the shocking devastation caused by bottom trawling and asked the governments to take action at the UN conference in just 4 weeks. Will the government use the conference to announce a ban on all bottom trawling in marine protected areas? And why has the Minister still not set out when we will ratify the Ocean Treaty, which will keep our SIDS and overseas territories safe?
The Climate and Ocean Adaptation and Sustainable Transition Programme is improving vulnerable coastal communities' resilience to climate change, including protecting and restoring coastal habitats, supporting nature-based solutions and improving small-scale fisheries management, and including the issue which she raises, the use of bottom-towed gear over rock and reef habitats in 13 marine management organisation areas.
Topicals.
Question number 1.
Mr. Speaker, through agile diplomacy, the government is striking new deals in the national interest, trade agreements with the United States and India, the first ever UK-EU summit next week, and intense efforts to deal with conflict around the world. Yesterday, I hosted the Weimar Group of European leaders in support of Ukraine. Last week I pressed for the welcome ceasefire between India and Pakistan, and every day I'm striving to stop the killing in Gaza so that we can get the remaining hostages like Eden Alexander home and aid to civilians.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Foreign Affairs Select Committee recently heard from the Falkland Islands government about the urgent need for the UK government to use the EU-UK reset as an opportunity to remove the detrimental post-Brexit tariffs on Falklands exports. What discussion has Secretary of State had with his department and with European counterparts to address these tariffs through a new trade arrangement for the Falkland Islands?
Well, can I reassure the honourable gentleman that we're always seeking to reduce tariff burdens for our overseas territories, and we are in ongoing discussions with the European Union particularly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Alawites, Druze and Christian minority communities in Syria are still living in fear of attacks from militiamen. Can the Secretary of State tell me what steps the government is taking to put pressure on the Syrian government to prevent any further attacks?
My honourable friend has long been an advocate for these issues, and in all our engagements with the Syrian government, we emphasise the necessity of demonstrating commitment to the protection of human rights. Our public statements have also made clear that civilians must be protected from violence and those responsible held to account. The protection of all civilians and their full inclusion in the transition process is vital for peace in Syria.
Secretary Pritchard.
Can the Foreign Secretary explain specifically what the UK is getting in return from China, having been China's biggest cheerleader in Europe? Has China committed to stop threatening British people on British soil? Has he received any new commitments from China on the adherence to the Sino-British Declaration to uphold freedom in Hong Kong, particularly with all the pernicious and malicious activities that we've been seeing from China in the United Kingdom?
Well, I'm very grateful to the honourable lady. I think the important starting point on China is to be consistent and not to have 4 or 5 different China policies, which is what we had under the last government. We have been clear that there are areas where we will cooperate with China, but she knows that we challenge China every time we see her on Hong Kong, on Jimmy Lai, and she knows there are areas where we're absolutely clear we will compete with China. We will be coming forward with our China audit shortly, and we can have a wider discussion.
Speaker, we've been hearing and waiting for the China audit for some time. China has repeatedly failed to take action to stop fuelling Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. And we saw President Xi stand side by side with Putin in Moscow just days ago. Can the Foreign Secretary provide details on the discussions that have taken place with President Zelensky over his forthcoming visit to Turkey? And what direct support is Britain giving for any discussions he will have with Putin to ensure that any peace is won and secured on Ukraine's term in such a way that respects the fundamental basic freedoms and principles that aggressors should never ever win?
Well, again, I'm grateful for that question. On the 22nd of April, I raised concerns with my Chinese counterpart on China's supply of equipment to Russia and DPRK's relationship with Russia, North Korea and Iran, and she will know that I sanctioned Chinese entities who are supplying dual-use technology to Russians, killing Ukrainians.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome that the UK government is to convene an urgent session of the UN Security Council this afternoon to discuss the food situation in Gaza. Will ministers make sure that Dame Barbara Woodward takes a message from my constituents in the Hill and Near, including Mary McKinnon, Ian Stephen, Louise Scullion and Malcolm McLean, who expressed their disgust and condemnation of the Israeli government using food as a weapon of war? 71,000 children in Gaza. Will he make sure that message is heard in New York?
Come on, there's other people. Please help me.
I thank my honourable friends for transmitting the concerns of his constituents, which I know are felt so widely across this House, and I can confirm that our permanent representative in New York will be expressing the full force of our views, as we heard earlier in the session.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister confirm the state of the current negotiations about the future of Gibraltar? Will they be concluded before the EU-UK reset? And will he confirm that the views and interests of the Gibraltarian people will be paramount?
Well, he can be absolutely assured on that latter point. In fact, I spoke to the Chief Minister of Gibraltar just this morning. We've been working closely with him and indeed with our EU and Spanish counterparts. All sides agree on the importance of concluding a treaty as soon as possible, and we're working closely with all the parties in that regard. We will only conclude an agreement that protects sovereignty and UK military autonomy, provides certainty for the people of Gibraltar and secures their future prosperity. And we will endeavour to achieve that in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the past few days, it's been reported in the Times newspaper that an airport worker and his wife, who works in the NHS, have been raising funds in the UK through an unregistered charity called Zaire UK and sending them to Hezbollah-linked groups in Lebanon. What steps is the Minister taking to ensure that charitable donations in the UK cannot be used to fund terrorism in the Middle East?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. The entirety of Hezbollah has been prescribed in the UK since 2019. Raising money for terrorist organisations is a criminal offence. This government will continue to take robust action against those suspected of raising money for terrorist organisations in the Middle East and around the world.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nearly every single child is at risk of famine in Gaza, as the Israeli government uses starvation as a weapon of war. Now, we've heard from ministers today about the action that the government has taken so far, but there are still some actions that they haven't taken, including the recognition of Palestine as a state, individual sanction and a total suspension of arms to Israel. If now is not the time to take those actions, when will be?
We are committed to recognising a Palestinian state at a time that has the most impact in achieving a reality most conducive to long-term peace in the region, and we continue to talk with our partners about this, and we've discussed the other issues already this session.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given the Prime Minister's warning that the world has fundamentally changed and that we're in a dangerous new era, will the Secretary of State commit to protecting the British Council and its soft power role in strengthening global relationships? And do they agree that any cuts to its support would undermine decades of trusted UK diplomacy?
Champions for the British Council on this front bench. It does a fantastic job to promote the UK abroad, and across this House we love the British Council.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Right Honourable Member for Hayes and Harlington raised a point of order yesterday following the Department's failure to respond to the member's letter asking the Secretary of State to come to the House and make a statement on alarming research showing continued large-scale UK export of lethal weaponry to Israel. Can I beseech the Secretary of State to make a statement to the House on this matter, and if he is not willing to do so, can he confirm all statements that he has made in this House since September 2024 relating to arms exports to Israel have been completely accurate and fully transparent?
Yes, I can.
Peter Swallow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can my right honourable friend confirm that this government is totally opposed to the expansion of Israel's military operations in Gaza and fully swear behind restoring the ceasefire?
Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I said last week, we are opposed to an expansion of Israel's military operation. I was asked in this chamber last week about comments from the Israeli finance minister about the destruction of Gaza, comments I hadn't seen at the time. I have since seen them, and I condemn them.
Mr. Carmichael. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I had not realised I was in the order of paper. I can only apologise for that. Matthew Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Sunday, I had the honour of meeting with Emily Damari. She told me about her good friends Ziv and Gali Berman, who remain in captivity. It's so clear to me that no hostage is free until all hostages are freed. We've seen the Hamas footage from the weekend, which only serves to deliver more torment to the families. Later this month, it will be 600 days since October 7th. Could the Minister set out, before that anniversary, what steps he'll be taking to ensure humanitarian access for those hostages?
Foreign Secretary. Well, I'm very grateful to the honourable gentleman. I welcome the release of Eden Alexander after an agonising 583 days in captivity, and I thank Qatar and Egypt for their support. We urge all parties to seize this opportunity to re-engage with negotiations, to return to a ceasefire. That is what will see the return of those hostages. And of course, in discussing these issues with Secretary Rubio, and indeed with partners in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, Arabia. I urge them to raise these issues with the President this week.
Julians.
There's a pattern emerging where the Trump administration takes initially extreme positions on international trade and foreign policy and then quickly readjusts to more realistic and sensible policies. And what opportunities does this give for British diplomacy?
Well, in many ways, that's a better question for President Trump, and I don't want to speak for him, but I am pleased that the United Kingdom was the first country to strike a trade agreement with the United States, and many international partners are ringing us up to ask us how we did it.
Chair of the Select Committee, Diane Litholman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I know there's a lot going on, but the Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Treaty is important. It's about our blue planet. It's about our oceans. And it used to be that we had a leadership position in it. In fact, when we were leading it, 115 countries signed that treaty, but it needs to be ratified as well. And very few countries are ratifying it, including Britain. And when we ask the government about it, the government says it's because they haven't got enough time. Have they dropped the ball? Is there a bill? Are we going to ratify it? And will we ratify it before the UN Oceans Conference?
Mr. Speaker, we will redouble our efforts to get into the legislative queue and do all the necessary to ensure maintain our leadership on this important area.
Conor Lockhart.
Mr. Speaker, today we welcome the release of Eden Alexander, the latest hostage freed by Hamas after over 500 days in captivity. The fact that they still have people in captivity is disgraceful and barbaric and puts into perspective the fact that we have the group Kneecap being platformed in Croydon who shouted support from a stage. What pressure is the government putting on the Palestinian authorities to ensure that the remaining hostages are returned to their families as they should be? They should never have been taken in the first place.
We continue to call with all of our partners for the immediate release of all hostages, and I think particularly of Avinatan Orr with his British mother, still in captivity under who knows what conditions, and we will continue to press for all hostages.
Final question, Debbie Abrahams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 15th of May is the 77th anniversary when we commemorate the 1948 Nakba. And this is when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced from their homes and dispossessed, and it still continues today. I pay tribute to ministers for the diplomacy they're engaged in and the recent MOU that was agreed with Palestine. But the children of Gaza cannot wait weeks and months. They need food and water now. What more can we do?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for continuing to raise these issues. We have got a meeting of the UN Security Council that we have put down this afternoon. It was important that at the weekend I spoke to colleagues in Saudi Arabia and UAE the weekend before about these issues, and of course with partners in the region, particularly as President Trump visits. I'm very concerned following a meeting with my German counterpart about Israeli decisions to reduce the number of distribution points, and we will be making these representations very actively over the coming days.
Right. We'll let the front bench change over.